We're outside the vehicle. We're going to activate remote start. The vehicle is set to run for 25 minutes. The remote will stay active while the engine is running. We can shut down the remotely started vehicle by pressing the lock button 3 times. We also have the capability of setting up the unit through programming to activate using lock, unlock, lock instead of lock 3 times. When you lock the doors 3 times, you generate 2 horn honks on the second and third press of the lock button. With the lock, unlock, lock method, you can start the vehicle without having those 2 horn chirps. Now this can only be done prior to shipping, so make sure if you're looking at the listing, you look at the activation method and be sure it's the method you choose, because we cannot change this once it's been shipped. And please do not buy it and then send us a message to change it, because we cannot promise that we would receive that message in time before the item ships. I'm going to start by removing the under dash cover that covers the fuse box. There's a turn tab here, and there's a push clip on this side. I'm just going to pop the push clip out. Next, we're going to remove the under dash piece. There are no screws, it's held down by clips. We're going to go ahead and we're going to apply a little outward pressure while we wiggle back and forth. Once we get a little gap started, it helps if we use a plastic tool to get down in there and give it a little persuasion. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to do this side. And we can use the plastic tool to help us. There's a clip on the bottom here. We're going to go ahead and pull that out. Clip on this side on the bottom. Now we're going to lift up and remove the lower dash. At this point, we're going to remove the steering column cover plastic. 3 Phillips screws. I'm going to go ahead and remove them. Okay, now the plastic pieces are held together by clips. There's a seam in the middle. I like to apply pressure to the seam to release the clips. So I'm going to go ahead with my thumb, I'm going to push on the seam. See, when I do this, you'll see it spread a little bit. So I need both hands to do this, so I'm going to put the camera back and continue on. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, push on the seam. Use my plastic tool and put a little pressure on the front here, or my finger, and get the column to separate. With the cover separated, I can lift up and pretty much get it to release. So we're going to want to remove the bottom piece. So we're going to spread the column cover apart a little bit so it fits over the ignition, and just pull downward. And we're going to slide the piece out. There's some long tabs here that go into these slots, and slide it out and remove it. This will give us access to the ignition and the immobilizer, and also the parking light switch, and where we can connect the optional horn connection. So we're going to go ahead and move the camera, and I'm going to show you the plugs that are involved. We're going to be dealing with 2 plugs, the ignition plug and the immobilizer plug. We're going to go ahead and remove the ignition plug from the ignition switch first. We're going to press the clip in, located in the center, and we're going to wiggle the plug lightly back and forth while we pull out and unplug the ignition plug. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to plug in our ignition T-harness. So our ignition T-harness has the ignition plug connector on it. We're going to go ahead and we're going to plug in our ignition plug connector. Going to make sure it clicks and locks. We're now going to plug the plug we removed from the ignition into the other side of our T-harness. Again, we're going to make sure it clicks and locks. Our ignition plug harness is installed. We do have a ground connection that we're going to connect in the next steps, but first we're going to connect our immobilizer connection. Now notice, on the immobilizer plug, on the vehicle is located right here, the immobilizer. So it's white in color, and our immobilizer plug is green. Some vehicles have a green immobilizer plug, but a common mistake is for somebody to assume that this green plug plugs in here, and it does not. It plugs into where the white plug goes. I've gotten these returned because people think they don't fit. If you try to plug it into this plug, it will not fit. We're going to remove the white plug. We're going to plug our green plug into the port the white plug was previously plugged into. We are now going to plug the white plug into the green port on our T-harness, and we're going to make sure it clicks and locks. We're left with parking light and horn wires that are optional connections that can be connected. The suggested ground point is located up under the dash, and it's a factory ground location. So we're going to use a 10 millimeter. We're going to remove the 10 millimeter bolt. We've removed the bolt and connected our ground along with the factory grounds, and we made sure that we put all the grounds back under the screw before tightening it up. At this point, we're ready to connect and program our device. We're going to be pressing and holding the program button while we insert the 6-pin power plug. When we do this, there are 3 LEDs on the front that are going to turn on and begin cycling. The first light to come on is going to be blue, and then it's going to change to a red LED. When the light changes to the red LED, we're going to release the program button. The light will stay red. So we're going to, again, hold the program button, plug in. We have our blue light. We have our red light. We release the button. If we fail to do so, I'm going to show you real quickly what will happen. Nothing major. We can correct this. So we're going to hold the button. We're going to plug in the plug. The lights are going to begin to cycle. We don't let go on red. They'll continue to cycle until we let go of the button. So we can wait as many times as we want for it to go round and round. When it gets to red, we release the button. If you release on another color, simply unplug the device, hold the program button down, plug it back in, release on red. Try to get it right on the first time because you don't want to fiddle around with the programming sequence. So now with the red light lit, we're going to plug in our 20-pin plug. We're going to plug in the white plug, and we're going to plug in the red plug. With all 3 plugs inserted into the unit, we're ready to begin the programming procedure. We're going to press and release the programming button 2 times. Press release, press release. The red light's going to begin flashing 1 time with a pause. At this point, we're going to place the key in the ignition and turn the ignition to the run position. When we do this, the red light's going to flash rapidly and go out. The blue light is going to come on and flash rapidly. We're now going to shut the key off and remove it from the ignition. The module programming is complete. Do not reprogram the module over and over again, as you run the risk of locking the module or making it inoperative. We can test our device by locking the doors 3 times. Now the vehicle is remote started and it will run for 15 minutes. The factory remote will not work while the engine is running to turn off the vehicle. In order to make the factory remote work while the engine is running, we have to make 2 additional connections to the vehicle. For now, I'm going to shut the engine off, pressing and holding the brake pedal. Now I'm going to show you the 2 lock and unlock connections required to make the OEM remote function while the engine is off. To access the lock and unlock wires, we're going to remove the driver's sill plate and kick panel. So we're going to start with our plastic tool, and we're going to get under the sill plate and just run the tool down the sill plate and pop the clips. You'll hear them pop. So we have about 4 or 5 clips we're going to release, and then we're going to remove the sill plate. And you can see the clips under here that we released. And we're going to remove the driver's kick panel. To remove the kick panel, we're going to pull the rubber door gasket away. And we're going to get our plastic tool up behind the sill plate, and we're going to pop out the clips. Somebody's been in here before on this vehicle, so the clips aren't that great. They're releasing pretty easy. Yours may be tighter. Going to remove the kick panel assembly. If you look, we have a clip located here and here. So these are the points where we're going to be trying to pull on the kick panel so we don't break it. So once we're inside the kick panel, we're going to be looking for the door harness. Now, a lot of people have had trouble with this connection. This is the make or break of the job. You're going to make this connection. If you make an incorrect connection, you smoke the unit. You burn it right out. So what we're looking for is this harness that comes in through the door jam here, or the kick panel right here. It's 2 harnesses and they turn into 1 harness right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this loom and remove this section of loom right here. Okay, so what I like to do is feel the loom. See if you can feel where the loom comes together, because it's split loom tubing, so there is a split in it. So if we cut it right on the split, we're only cutting the tape and not the loom. So I've located it, I can feel it. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to cut this down without cutting into the conductors. We're going to remove this section of loom. You can always tape it back on if you want to. So now the wires we're looking for in here are very small gauge. So if you hook up to the actuator wire, you're going to smoke the unit. So if you start looking through the wires one at a time, you're going to see that most of them are the same gauge. Then you're going to come across some really tiny wires. You're going to have a tiny gray, which is located right here. And then you're going to have another small gauge blue, and it's a light blue. So I've located the wires. Now I know these are the wires, but people have been having a really tough time with this, and they've been burning out units left and right. So please follow these steps very carefully. So we have the 2 wires that are our target wires that we want to connect our locks to. So there's a couple ways we can test to make sure. The best way is with a regular light bulb style test light. This is a light bulb style test light. It happens to have a hook so you don't poke your fingers, but it is a regular analog light test light. No LED. When you probe the wire, the locks are going to actuate. So listen. You hear the locks, and that's the lock wire. That is the light blue. Now we'll hit the gray wire. This real tiny gauge, it's very small. Listen. That is the unlock wire. When we probe it, the locks actuate. So a common mistake is they're putting their test light on, they're hitting the switch, the light lights up, they think they're on the lock wires. Well, I got news for you. They're negative trigger locks. They don't have a positive on them when they're triggering. So again, use a light. So if you don't have a light, I'm going to show you an alternative method of testing these. Okay, so I give you posi taps to make these connections. So these taps are toolless. They unscrew. There's a piece with a groove in it. We're going to slip this groove over the wire, and then we're going to screw the posi tap back together. There's a needle that pokes into the wire, makes a connection. Search posi taps if you don't know how to use them. Tons of videos. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to install one of the posi taps. We're going to install it on the blue wire. So now I've got a lot of people that are up in the boot telling me how hard it is to get to. This is where you want to get them. You don't want to be up in your door boot. Actually, I'm going to put both of the posi taps on. I've tested both wires. Now I'm going to go back a couple steps and I'm going to show you what to do if you don't have a test light and you're stubborn. You don't want to go get a test light, and you're going to do what you want to do, and no matter what I say, you're just not going to listen. Well, maybe you take the advice of this next step. Okay, so we've installed the posi taps. To connect our incoming wire, we loosen the collar. So before we connect our lock wires, we take a piece of scrap wire. Anything will work. We want a piece of scrap wire, and we want to strip about 1/8 of an inch off the end. I'm going to grab my strippers. So I have my strippers. I'm going to strip the 1/8 inch off, and I'm going to strip it off on the other end also. So both ends are stripped, about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to connect to the first target wire that I think may be the lock wire. The wire is going to go in. It's going to bottom out. I'm going to push it a little deeper in, tighten the collar. It's going to lock into the posi tap. Now at this point, I'm going to take one single strand of wire, and this will act like a fuse. So if we're on the wrong wire, it'll just burn this little strand. It's got one single strand. Take it, I'm going to touch it to the bare metal of the vehicle. And you hear the locks lock? I've just confirmed without a test light that I am on the correct wire. Just have to touch it to bare metal. Can't be painted metal. Here, I'll touch it here. Let me unlock them so it's louder when I do it. Okay, watch. Okay, so I just verified. No test light, no meter, no special tools. So we know that is the lock wire, that blue. So I'm going to unloosen the collar. I'm going to take the wire out. I'm going to put it in the gray wire here. And I'm going to give you a close-up of these wires. So I want to make sure you know exactly which wires they are. So I put the little test wire in the gray, tightened it down, did a little pull test, got a connection. Now listen, I'm going to touch this to bare metal, one little strand, and there the locks go the other way. So without a test light, no special equipment, I've just verified my lock wires. We can go ahead and we can connect lock and unlock safely to these wires. So if you don't do this step, you run the risk of just burning the unit out needlessly. It will burn out the first time you try to unlock the doors because it'll be a dead short because these are negative wires, they're not positive. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to strip off the end, and we're going to make our connections from our unit. So the good thing about the posi taps is they're reusable. So we're going to connect the lock, and then we're going to connect the unlock, and then we're going to test our system. So now we're going to test our remote starter. Okay, now when the engine's running, our lock and unlock button will still function. You can hear the locks locking and unlocking. There's lock, there's unlock, and we can shut the engine off by locking 3 times. So make sure that the lock wires are correct. I'm going to give you a close-up now so that you can get a little visual on the gauge. It's a very small gauge. Okay, you can see the wires that I'm connected to. It's hard to tell the camera, but the gauge is smaller than anything else in here. So they're very small, and if you test them either with a light or using the bare wire test, you can determine that these are the correct wires to be connected to. So this leaves us with the optional parking light and horn connection. The parking light and horn wires are run up through the harness that goes to the immobilizer. So our parking lights are the pink wire, horn is the orange and black. So if you continue to watch the video, I'm going to show you where these optional connections are. Okay, if we're going to do the parking light connection and the lights off connection here, we're going to want to unplug the parking light switch. Now you may think this is the parking light harness. It is not. You have to lift this up to get at it, and we can remove that top piece. This is the plug that will have the parking light wires on it. We're going to go ahead and unplug it. It's a black plug. We've unplugged the parking light switch plug, and we've identified the parking light wire. We're dealing with this light blue wire, second pin in from the end on the bottom row. I have the clip in the upright position. If you're looking for the horn wire, we're up here on this plug. We're going to go ahead and unplug it. We're going to look at the back of the plug, and we're going to see this orange wire right here, first pin in, top row. That is the horn wire. If you put a negative signal on this, it will activate the horn. Okay, just to show you that it is the horn, I put a negative signal on it with an ordinary test light, nothing fancy, and the horn will activate. So if we want to make a horn connection, it's done right there. Again, parking lights you can also test with a test light by putting a negative signal on her. And that's me activating the parking lights with a test light. So it's always good to confirm your connections. There are upgrades to the system. There's the 642W two-way long-range remote with about 3,500 feet of range. And then there's the RFK 411 one-way single-button remote that's capable of locking, unlocking, and starting the vehicle by using multiple presses of the button, and of course the cell phone controller, the MYCAR. I'm going to show you an example with the MYCAR. Adding the optional MYCAR is a simple process. If you purchase the complete kit from me with the MYCAR, I will pre-program the MYCAR to the unit. I'm not going to go into programming the MYCAR. I'm just going to show you the connections that you will have to make. To connect the MYCAR, simply plug our blue plug into the 4-pin blue plug on the unit. The MYCAR's LEDs will come on. The green one is a cellular lock LED, and the red one is a GPS lock LED. The module is going to search for cellular and GPS signals. When the device locks, the lights will go solid. So we're going to set the device with the appropriate side facing down, the one that says this side down, up on top of the steering column, and let it acquire a signal. We have our app up and running. We're going to go ahead and send a lock command. We have our doors successfully locking with a confirmation back to the cell phone. I'm going to unlock our doors. We have our doors unlocked, successful confirmation back to the phone. Now we're going to start the vehicle. Now we have a successful start, confirmation back to our unit. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to shut our vehicle off. We can also use the GPS feature to track the vehicle. Remember, we never lose the ability to activate from the OEM remote.